This is the day of Amazon buy it now button. So why does it take months and months to get a website up? It should not be that way.
Today, we have a dynamic guest, Lindy Nowak, the founder and CEO of Up in a Day, delivering bespoke SEO optimized websites designed to attract leads for small businesses literally overnight. We're going to explore the motivation behind Lindsay's leap into entrepreneurship and uncover the strategies she used to achieve such remarkable growth and success. Hey, Lindy, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
What inspired you to create this unique website agency?
So as you mentioned, I was in corporate for a really long time, actually about 15 years, and I never quite fit in. At the time, I didn't realize it, but looking back and now having my own agency, I can see where the not fitting in came into play. And I felt like I was always boxed in and I never had the opportunity to really be who I could be and thrive and have a voice. And when I moved to Miami 6 years ago, I realized at the time, actually, I took a small gig at Norwegian Cruise Lines. And that's really when I realized that corporate America was just not for me. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I knew I couldn't fit in. I knew I wasn't happy and I needed to do something for myself. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, like a huge family. And I am the only one out of my mom's side and my dad's side that went corporate. So that was kind of like, trigger one. While I was at Norwegian and realizing that I wanted to do something on my own, start my own something, I went through a lot of ideas. The first thing I did is I bought a book that was like the basics of the basics, like how to start your own creative agency. I don't remember the name of it. It's a really good book and it's a really big book. And I remember at like our allotted lunch hour for 1 hour, I would
Yeah.
go out into like the office park, just sitting there with this book and be like, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I start this agency? And lo and behold, I did it. One day I just woke up and I was like, that's it, no more. And I walked into the company in Norwegian and I just gave my notice. And it's history from there. Actually didn't go straight into creating Up in a Day. I started with a small digital agency that I called Lino Creative, which is how Up in a Day actually, what Up in a Day rolled into or from, I should say. And Lino Creative, I started kind of doing a little freelance and then hiring some people as freelancers. And then we started growing and we started doing really well. And we were doing traditional agency work. So branding, digital marketing, a lot of social media advertising. It was super fun. I learned so much and I had a great time. But ultimately, I realized one day, I think it was around year one, not even, that I wasn't fulfilled there either. And I was starting to grow. I was really gaining self confidence. I was moving out of that imposter syndrome, which so many of us have. And I started thinking, what is it that I love to do? Like exercise, right? Like, what am I really good at? What would ultimately fulfill me? And that's not something that comes quickly, but I started really thinking about it. What I was having issues with Lino Creative is that I felt like I was still kind of working for someone. You know, you have clients on retainer, and so you're ultimately servicing them, and they, in a way, kind of get the final say. So it's kind of like a mix of that corporate creep coming back in, just for me personally, and learning how to say no, learning boundaries, and then ultimately realizing that it wasn't enough. And one day, I was listening to a webinar and the guy who was hosting it was talking about productizing services. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Because I had always dreamt of creating something, a product, a service in which somebody comes in to the door, they buy it, we make it, and we send them on their way. So I went through a really short exercise, and I'm not kidding when I say short, like 10 minutes. He had everybody do that exercise. What do you love doing? What are you really good at? What would ultimately fulfill you? What can you package up and sell? And at Lino Creative, we were designing really big sites. We were doing really big Shopify sites and really big Squarespace sites. At the same time, I we were getting a lot of referrals coming our way, desperate for a website yesterday, and we didn't have it in our margins to help them. Just the time, the cost, the business model. And so during this webinar, I'm thinking about these people, and I'm a very like I love helping people. I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way to help these small business owners that are coming in our doors, like referrals, people who'd find us online. And so the exercise started rolling in, and I said, well, I personally love creating websites. I love the marketing and the sales aspect of it. We're really good at it. We're really fast. Oh my gosh, we can do this really fast. We can build really simple, awesome websites for small business owners, like super lickety split. And I was like, man, I packaging it up. We can do this in a day. Oh my gosh, we can get this up in a day. Up in a day. It was like ding, ding, ding. And it was so fun. It was like that realization that you're just like, oh my gosh, you just feel empowered and you're just ready to go. And that's how Up in a Day was born, from the little tiny seed.
I love that. Is the inspiration you got from, just that 10 minutes, right? That you went through that webinar. How did you sort of though evaluate the idea? You mentioned other digital marketing agencies, some that, you were familiar with, others out there. It's just the competition. How do you evaluate the idea?
Of course, because there are millions of website agencies out there. And so when I came up with the idea for Up in a Day, I said, we are going to be the opposite of all of the agencies that give bad services, because the people that were coming in our door desperate for a website, like I said yesterday, it wasn't that they were like time strapped per se. Some were, but it was really that they had been burned by their web developer in the past or currently. And I still have calls like twice a week with these same issues. Like, my developer disappeared. I don't know how to get in my website. I have a really big WordPress site and it's super old, and my developer tells me it's going to take 6 months to fix. All kinds of stuff. Whatever happened, they got burned. And so when I started devising the business model, which took forever, by the way, it was like blood, sweat, and tears. Putting that out there to start. I said, how can we stand apart by delivering the best service and best quality, so that people, when they leave our office, if you will, when they leave Up in a Day, they are ready to go. They are set, they are happy, and they are proud, and their business grows. That is the core of our business. And before I even devised the processes and systems, I knew that's what I wanted to provide. And so it's almost like I wanted to provide this really awesome customer service, and then I built the product around it, which was really interesting, because when we were getting people at Lino Creative coming in the door and saying, I've been burned. I was like, that's so unfair and so unnecessary, because this is the day of Amazon buy it now button. So why does it take months and months to get a website up? It should not be that way.
Yeah, yeah. The quick solution that we seemingly was at every other facet of what we do, from streaming to right purchasing products online. Why are these websites? Because I've been in the same spot. Whether it's people that hit you up on LinkedIn or Upwork or Fiverr, and then they sort of disappear, or it takes forever for what you think should be a very simple process, especially when they're using templates, right? But for you, after you sort of evaluate the idea, what are like the next steps you take to validate the idea in order to reduce risk?
Good question. I am risk adverse. So that's an awesome question for me, because I'm the type of person, I don't like to be in debt. I like to mitigate risk. I like to think about all my options before I take the next step forward. So that could be why it took me so long to devise the business model. the process in doing so took a lot. There were a lot of facets, like, I forget what they're called, like the word clouds, like, you envision the company. Where do you want it to be in 6 months? What does your staff structure look like? And these are just like, I was just putting ideas. Like, what is my ideal life look like? If I'm going to go out on my own and create something at this point of my career and even my life, I want it to be easy and enjoyable, and I wanted to have fun. And those were actually the first step I took with the values, creating the values. I read the EOS model, the book. So I sat down and I created the values. And of course, those have changed because the business has evolved so much, but there are two that really stick to us still to this day that we practice every day. And it's the internal and external, which is, obviously providing great value, but having fun and enjoyment. So like every day, are we having fun? Is the process fun for our clients? And so that was a really important when I was starting the business. I had to have a business coach. I had to actually, this is really interesting and something I don't typically talk about, especially on podcasts, but I think it's relevant for you and possibly your audiences. I didn't realize how bad my imposter syndrome was being in corporate, even as a creative director, managing big teams. I didn't know how to talk about myself. I was pretty insular. I don't like bragging. I don't like talking about myself at all. And when you have to talk about the business, you're basically talking about yourself and why you started it and what the business is about. I didn't even know how to start a sentence. So once I devised the business model, the first step I had to take in order to launch the product was to get coaching, like speech coaching, which was really interesting. And it was so hard. It was one of the hardest things I actually went through in the business so far. And it I think I did coaching with her for about 2 months, and I had to do the elevator pitch, and I had to speak in front of a camera and in front of a mirror, and I had to call a bunch of friends and tell them about the business idea and have that elevator pitch ready to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of, I think, attorneys will take acting lessons. Sometimes you have that corporate shield, maybe that everyone knows the corporation you work for when you work again at one of these huge companies. You're not having to really sell them because everyone knows who whatever company is that you're at, these big brands that you work with. So when you're coming out there trying to sell yourself, it does that's a really insightful point you made, because I think a lot of people do deal with that. They do struggle with, okay, now it's just me here, and can I pitch my business in 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it might be to somebody that I just meet that could change my business overnight. But I have to convey that idea to that person in order to, get them on board. Are you starting though at this point with money from yourself, or how are you funding this in the beginning?
I bootstrapped it the whole way, which is probably why it took a long time to get up and running. So Lino Creative funded up in a day, basically. So it took a little bit longer because I had to attend to my staff and the current clients at Lino Creative. And then at the same time, I had to really focus on developing up in a day. Honestly, up in a day didn't take a lot of money to start. I mean, it just regular overhead costs. And, I had the computer, have an agency that you start from scratch. You have what, your computer, your office, which I worked from home. That was like always a dream of mine that I made come true. And paying the freelancers, but that comes into, the cost of the service. And so it actually didn't take that much. I just had to worry about rent and living expenses to start. And then, of course, as we evolved, then the business started paying for itself.
Yeah, Wi-Fi, like just some basic costs you probably had. How are you starting though? Is it clients that you already had at other agencies, or are you kind of going out? Or is there sort of anything you did to specifically launch up in a day?
Yes, I made it first. I made a list of every single person I know, from my corporate career to my family to people I hadn't talked to in like 10 years. That this was part of the speech coaching also. It's like putting it out there. And so I made this huge list of people. I emailed them or text them, and I asked them if I could take 5 to 10 minutes of their time because I have a new go to market productized service that I'd love to talk about to get their feedback on. And not only did I get feedback, but it also kind of put a little, you know, back in their head that Lindy's doing something really cool and can help a lot of people who need websites. So that's what I did, and that's how I initially got the word out there. As I got on the phone and talked to people, and it worked. It did really well. I also did some pro bono projects because with what we do, the product has to be tested. You have to test the product, the system, the process, the price, most importantly, as well as your ideal customer. And when I started Up in a Day, I was like, oh, everyone's going to need this. Everyone's just going to come streaming in the door as soon as they hear about us. And it doesn't work that way. Yeah. But it was fine. I didn't mind doing the free websites. In fact, the first year, I designed every single website myself. I did not care because again, testing the product, testing the system, testing the ideal clientele, and most importantly, testing the business to see if it's something I wanted to continue. Is this fun? Like, how big do I want it to get? Because when you start your own business, it can be as big as you want it to be, which is really interesting. And you can choose to grow really fast and throw a bunch of money behind it, or and get funding, or you could, if time is on your side, you can take your time and build slowly, which is, risk averse Lindy, which is what I did. And it actually, so happy with the outcome.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a lot of fun to also sharpen your skills, right? Because different products, projects, whatever you're designing for websites for, are coming up and kind of putting you outside of your comfort zone in a way to, take on these new things and say, okay, I can do this type of website. I thought maybe this would be a struggle, but since I'm doing everything myself, you're also learning along the way, I think, as well. You mentioned speech. What besides that would be, in terms of the business side, biggest challenges that you encountered in these early stages?
The biggest challenges I encountered was realizing that you cannot sell every single website that you get on with somebody you get on the phone with. I have a couple. Also, there's a seasonality to to the agency life, just agencies, as at least for us. And we cater to like basically 1 to 3 people shops. So single business owners, that's directly who we talk to. That's who approves the website and that's who manages the website. So, or their team after the fact, but we only converse with the business owner. Well, the business owners are busy too. They're busy business owners. And so again, why Up in a Day is so perfect for them. Busy people who don't want to have anything to do with a website. They just want it done and they want it done right the first time. Well, they're also managing their family life and their business and their employees if they have any. And so, for example, if they have kids, well, they're going to go on spring break. And a lot of our clients will go on spring break. So we know, or tax season. Tax season, they owe a lot of, may or may not owe a lot of taxes for their business. So either they're ramping up in December, January to use the rest of their budget to have write-offs, or during tax season, they are kind of taking a step back from spending. And so it can get a little bit quiet. That took a couple of years to really learn because when times used to be slow, like when times were slow, I would get so anxious and I'd be like, oh my God, this is not working. This product isn't working. Oh my God, am I failing? Like, what are we going to do? We're not making any money. I have to pay my staff. That is so stressful. And so realizing the cadence at which sales come in and taking those opportunities to develop the business when times are slow is something that I had to learn along the way. And that was really difficult. The third thing that was difficult was sales. Oh, you create a product, but who has to sell it?
Yeah.
You do. And I love sales. I was no good at it. Again, we're talking about the speech. I had to read a lot of books. I got a business coach, and that was a really fun learning curve. Getting on the phone and talking to people and explaining your product, why it's different, why it's right for them, trying to sell something within a half hour to an hour. I mean, it's still challenging. It's something that I will probably always be learning from. But when I started the company, that was a huge challenge.
Yeah. So when you said that in terms of the challenge of seasonality, to overcome that, was it just shifting the focus to developing the business, or were there other things as the years passed that you've learned how you overcame that sort of like, sort of lull in I guess your production?
It helps to have enough money in the bank. I want to start there. That will help to ease the kind of anxiety or fear that one may encounter. And there have been a couple times where the money in the bank was a little low, and I did go through that. But I would say that it didn't take long for me to realize that I had to take those low times to develop the business. Because my first year, I was doing all of the work. I was doing all of the website development, and I had an assistant, a virtual assistant. When I started developing the business in multiple facets that we don't have enough time to go into today, but that's when I realized that I needed help. And so I started hiring my first two employees, and those downtimes, like literally 3 months at one point early on, the business just completely excelled. I just went out there. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to spend the money on good staff, people who can do what I need better than I can do. I brought two people on board, and it was magnificent. It's like, I'm thinking about this now. I haven't talked about this in a long time. And I'm looking at how the business grew, the company grew after bringing two people on board, and it completely excelled. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun now having people on board that have the same passion that you do.
Well, I was going to ask, now that you mentioned staff, what is the sort of the process you took and to ensure you're hiring the right people?
Great question. The first one was order. I needed a project manager. At one point, I was running the company with a virtual assistant. We had 20 clients, and we had no project management system. And I
Wow.
was too busy to do the research. When you are too busy to work on the business, you need help. 100%. Even if you bring somebody in part-time for a short time, just like a stint, someone to come in and get you set up with what you need. For me, for up in a day, we needed a project management system and somebody to manage that. So that was number one. And then marketing. I hate getting on social media. And coming up with my own posts. I tried to do it so many times. I hired an agency, and then I was like, yeah, I don't really like what they're doing. And then I tried to do it myself, and I was like, I am no good at this, nor do I like doing it. You do the exercise. What do I love doing, hate doing, kind of like doing? Okay. Social media was at the bottom of my list. I don't mind
Yeah.
LinkedIn, but for some reason, Instagram and I just like don't gel. So so then I knew I needed somebody to come in from a marketing perspective. And actually, she came in first as my assistant. And then I realized I didn't need an assistant anymore because I had a project management manager and management system. And so I got lucky enough that the assistant came with a marketing and sales background, and she again just took the reins, and she's been just doing fabulous ever since.
Interesting to me always, like, who do you hire first and how do you hire effectively? Looking back though at hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently from the start if you could?
It's a great question. I should also say, and everyone's probably asking, well, what about the designers? Your core
But
product, you have designers. Yes, the designers came first. I was actually merely talking about developing the company. So, yes, the designers are always there.
yeah, yeah, of course, of
Yes,
course.
of course. If I could have done it differently, self care and to give myself some grace, to be truly honest. Like, I was really hard on myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I had some tough times where I didn't know exactly how to take a step back and see the business from 30,000 feet. I just was like, go, 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 like rolling out of bed and into the chair at 6:30 a.m. and then rolling back in bed at 9 p.m. Like, that was hard. But You got to do it sometimes. Sometimes you got to do it. You got to go through these times to realize what you don't want to circle back to realize that, okay, did that, it's okay. Giving myself grace and being proud of myself earlier on, that would have been nice. Now I
Yeah,
feel tough,
yeah.
but
Yeah, because you were wearing so many hats in the beginning, right? It sounded like you had, before you brought an assistant, 20 clients. And how were you managing your time? Was your day just kind of like picking up things, just putting something down, starting another? Just was there any order to it, or how are you sort of managing that time each day?
I am a paper and pen type of woman. So I would end each day with everything that needed to get done the next day so that you're not up at 3 a.m. like stressing about it. Then I would start the beginning of the day going through that list and then making a list for that day. Luckily, having 20 clients on the roster doesn't mean that everybody's ready to go at the same time. People need time to gather their assets. They need time to, make the decision, whatever they're doing at the time. So, 20 clients, yes, that's a heavy, heavy lift and a heavy load. But I developed the systems and the processes before I got the 20 clients. So I had already internally, but I was able to manage them just by nature of like what I had going on with my basic systems at the time. And then when I brought on the project manager, we started using Asana, and that took like everything out of my brain and onto the computer or paper, if you will.
I'm very similar with that too. I like to have lists for the next day. Committing it paper to pen has always been effective for me as well. Can you talk a little bit about the growth, like the progression from year one when it's just you before you bring someone on to like the present, and how that's kind of grown since day one?
I got lucky enough where I did not have a negative year. I've had steady growth of about 30% in revenue year over year. When you put your mind to something and you're really having fun with it and you're really gung ho, like, let's see what this machine can do, that will help happen. Also, again, letting go and just, you know, learning about the business, letting the business evolve, creating new processes, learning from good clients, learning from bad clients. Since year one, where it started actually just as websites, second year, third year, well, now we're in our fourth year and we realize, what is the market asking us for? And this is where the growth comes in because you can start with one product and then times change. The people change, the economy changes, like most importantly, people's needs change. And it's that trickle down effect. So you start to really pay attention to your market, your ideal clients, and create new products around their needs. Obviously, we build websites. These websites are really easy to manage. They're in Squarespace. They have this great website and they don't know how to get people to it. They are on LinkedIn, as a majority of our clients are, and they don't know how to leverage their website. So, what started as Lindy doing consulting services and having paid workshops, which I still kind of do for our current clients, is, well, how can we systemize this? How can we create a product around Lindy's expertise so that Lindy doesn't have to work so much and the business can fulfill that need? So we started turnkey LinkedIn services, optimization services, specifically for business owners, not for those who are looking for like jobs, who are looking for employment. So that was really cool. That, seeing the happy faces once we launched that product and that service was really fulfilling and so needed. So you start to see these gaps in the market. So it's little things like that, just try it, put it out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, so would you say that marketing strategy was the most effective one, or were there other sales and marketing strategies that you tested out in order to gain traction as you were growing?
Oh, definitely. That was just one small example of growing organically. Testing the market. So when we started, we serviced pretty much any small business, and that's okay, and we still do. But to truly make the revenue, to make our revenue goals, we realized that we had to start marketing towards certain niches. And so we created products for those niches. So how did we decide who to go after? we actually just said, well, where do we have in our portfolio this industry? And at the time, it was, I believe it was for coaching and consulting. So we had a few websites under our belt, great people, easy to work with. Price point was right, like deep pockets, some of them, the more, those who are more seasoned in their coaching practice. And we had some, like I said, we had some great websites to show as examples. So we created a product around service product for coaches and consultants. And now this is our biggest niche. Then you can put your marketing efforts towards one thing, like towards that one niche, because yes, you can just market your services to anyone, but that's a little bit more of a slow growth. So if it's possible to find, I know it's so hard to niche, and I'm usually not a proponent of it because it's, unless you know exactly who you're going after, if you can cater to everybody, that's awesome too. But if you can just find like something that you can market against and for, then you can create all of these organic campaigns specifically for those people, get a couple people in the door, again, test the market. Does it fit? Okay, it's a great fit. Okay, let's go harder with our marketing efforts and get some more people in the door. And then what happens? So you're putting organic and paid marketing towards a certain industry niche. Well, you get enough people behind you that you're servicing, that you're making really happy. Well, they're going to start to bring people in. So all of a sudden, that coaching business starts to become a referral based business. And so now that machine is working for that industry that you have. So now you can go after, okay, well, what's another industry that we love working with? Well, we love working with the finance industry or development industry. And so the same thing happens. You start getting those kind of referral based clients coming in, and then the machine starts running. And that is not easy to do. That took years, and I didn't know about that. I actually, when I started Up in a Day, I was like, this is going to be a referral based business, and everyone, like I said, is going to come in the door and tell everybody about it. Well, it doesn't always happen that way. So it's a learned thing, and it takes time. Referral businesses, at least for what we provide, does take time. Why? Because website agencies tend to be perceived as to have like a lack of trust, because so many people have had bad experiences that you have to provide, you have to deliver, and you have to convince them from the get-go why you're different, why we're a good fit for you, but also making sure that they're a good fit for us, and then providing the value and the service, and then all the way through to execution fruition.
Is that sort of how you build your community? Like, are there, referrals obviously help. Are there any strategies that you may have put together to help build a community for Up in a Day?
The webinars and the workshops really help to build a community, because people will come back and ask you questions. They start to come to you as like a trusted source, and that creates community. And well, actually, Joe, because we have our clients will come back time and time again for additional pages, a website refresh, something that they want added to their site. But we are a transactional company. So when we build the website, we transfer it over to the client. That's usually the end of the customer engagement. But what we're seeing is they really love us, and so they just come back and they ask me if I'm giving a workshop, they ask me if I'm giving a webinar, they'll ask me random questions about some marketing, and so they kind of always like stick with us, which we really really love. We're also really big on LinkedIn. We recently ish so actually, I thought that was the only community. And as I'm talking, I'm actually realizing that we have built a really cool community on LinkedIn. We have an Up in a Day page, company page, but the community is centered around Lindy, my profile, and my feed. And we give webinars where I post all kinds of fun content. Like my team is now involved, and they're now like forefront facing on my feed and their own feeds. So that kind of community around LinkedIn, believe it or not, is because we're all digital. So we have to find that place, right? So that
Yeah.
that actually works out really well.
Absolutely. That social strategy definitely is a long play.
It's a balance. It's a balance to work in the business and on the business. So that's what I was saying earlier when we're slow, that business development time is everything. That is your everything. To really like this is the power of your business. When it's slow, let it go. It's okay. Really think about, okay, we are here in our revenue goal for this quarter. Okay, we're down 50%. That's okay. How can for Q3, how can we increase to 20 or 30%? How can we get there? Is it new products? Is it new staff? What kind of monetary investments should we make? Do we need to make? And running the numbers. Running the numbers is always scary, getting into that Excel sheet. But it's also empowering. Once you make yourself do it and then you walk away, you're like, you feel empowered and confident that you can move forward because you know the numbers. So you know how much you can put into the company to build it or grow it, keep it sustained, or come up with a creative idea that is something totally new and nuanced and try that for a little bit.
Yeah, jumping into those books can be scary. I can attest to that. How about like any pivotal moments or tipping points for you in this journey so far? Like any takeaways you could share?
Sure. I feel like I spent too long on my own when I could have hired my two employees internally, not the designers, but the project manager and a marketing person and a graphic designer earlier. I could have afforded to do it, but I was too afraid to spend the money. And I feel like if I would have bounced on that maybe 6 months to a year earlier, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, it's all meant to be, but it would have been nice to see how if we could have grown faster. But so that would have been like a pivotal moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And how about like if you had to change anything about the journey, right? Like say you could go back in time, start over, change one thing. What would that one thing be?
To not have so much fear of building something and putting so much pressure on myself because I knew it would work, and to relax and just let it happen. And instead, every day I was just like grinding. So I feel like that would have been the number one thing I would have changed for the business.
You don't know what to do in the beginning. You're just kind of, I'm doing this on my own. You're used to corporate. You don't have to think about all these other things. I think you hit it a lot earlier on in this discussion, making sure you're taking care of yourself as well before you even sort of get involved in all this day to day, taking on all these tasks that, just stressors for people. You all seem to have, a good, well run machine now, but you mentioned new revenue streams and things that offerings that you put on, people come back to you. What do you see for the future?
Well, I'm working less.
Mm, right?
What I see in the future is that we're obviously designing more websites on a monthly basis, always. I foresee our team to maintain its boutique style. So I don't want to grow into a 30, 40 person agency. I actually want to stay nice and neat. So I don't know what that looks like from, a headcount standpoint, but I have realized just recently that I'm happy having a small firm that does big things. And I want to stay that way. And that's going to be hard to do if we start to get really busy and having to bring in more people. So that'll be interesting, but really just, helping as many people as possible get really great websites online that truly help their business and just affecting business owners' lives. Like I know what business owners go through because I've been there myself. My family, oh my gosh, they're small businesses left and right. My dad, he had a graphic design business. My uncles, they all have cafes and restaurants. My aunt, I mean, everybody has their own thing. And I grew up watching all of that. My sister, even, she owns like 10 surf shops. So I can see what they go through. So when people come our way and being able to just help them with what seemingly might just be like, oh, it's a website, but it's not just a website. Like having a website today is so important. Your online presence is like everything because that's where people go for confirmation, even to buy a product off of it. So, and that's really grueling for a lot of business owners. Like, how do I find an agency? Oh my gosh, forget it. I'll just have my cousin do it. And then ultimately, like you're losing revenue because you have a really poor online presence. So, touching as many of those business owners as possible to really help them is how I see Up in a Day really growing, because we will be that trusted agency that people will go to and know that they're going to get what they want and need.
What advice would you give to people who are aspiring entrepreneurs that want to start their own business?
I liked my path personally. I read a lot of books of what it takes. That was the first thing I did. Then I started writing out a list of what it looked like for me to what does my life look like if I were to have my own business? Why do I want this so bad? And what do I want my life to look like having this business? That was the first thing I did. And I didn't mention it earlier, but my business coach tasked me with that. And I was like, this is silly, but it was everything, because you put it on paper and it starts to really kind of profoundly affect your decision making. So to have the idea is one thing. To see your life with the idea and the business is another thing. That would be my takeaway for everybody. Is this truly what you want? Like, and if it's not, it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to try something. And if the business fails, try something new, because every time a business fails, you will take something from that and start something next. Somebody told me once, not too long ago, I was actually on a podcast, and after the podcast, he said to me, Lindy, what you have is amazing, but I'm telling you right now, Up in a Day is not your ultimate. Up in a Day is what is going to get you to that next mark in your life. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really crazy to think about. And that I think he could be right. Like, Up in a Day is not going anywhere. It's like, how do you personally want to grow? We have one life to live. And for you, if you feel like you want to start something like a business, try something new to market, maybe it's existing, man, try it and try doing it while you're still at your job if you can. Everyone has a different situation. Do your research, look at yourself in the mirror, ask yourself if it's what your life would look like if you had this, and then educate yourself and try it.
That's great advice. Yeah. For people though that want to learn more about you, check out those insightful posts on LinkedIn. Check out your website for your services. Where's the best place to get in touch with you?
Right on our website, LinkedIn, of course, that'd be great, is slash Lindy Nowak. And then for our website, it is upinaday.co.
And then from there, you can, I see at the bottom, there's, links to all your social profiles and things like that. So that whatever channel they use, but obviously the website is, like you said, the more important than people think, and know that they should have that set with, for their business.
Yes, absolutely. I know I'm so used to saying upinaday.co, but it's because there's book a call all over the website. So everybody will see.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your story, for just, all of your insights that you've kind of given to the audience. So, again, I was excited to talk to you. I'm glad we did, because this is exactly the learnings I thought I would take away from it, and people would take away from it. So, I do agree with that other host that you talked to. There is a lot more in store for you just listening to you. So, we're on the same page there. So, thank you again for sharing that with everyone. And it's been really nice to get to know you.
Oh, great. I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me on your show.